Hey guys, tonight we are going to find ourselves waking up in a rather unusual predicament. Picture this, you snap awake, but something is immediately, profoundly wrong star. The bed is too large, too ornate. The air smells faintly of wood smoke and something animal. You reach up to rub the sleep from your eyes, and your hand feels all different. Coarser, larger, adorned with a signet ring you definitely don't recognize. You sit up, heart pounding, and the room swims into focus, tapestries depicting hunting scenes, heavy wooden furniture, and a window overlooking a landscape that seems ripped from a history book, or, more accurately, a very old painting. Oh, and that voice? The one croaking in your head as you try to figure out what's going on. Yeah, that's not yours either. Trust me, in this scenario, the odds of you making it to morning tea are slim. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, as always, shout out your location and local time in the comments. Let's see where in the world our collective consciousness is gathering tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stumble out of the ridiculously oversized bed, legs feeling strangely heavy, and catch your reflection in a polished metal disc hanging on the wall. The face staring back is not yours. It's a man's face, weathered and stern, with a thick, dark beard and piercing eyes. You blink. He blinks back. Okay, this is officially weird. Like waking up in someone else's body in the Middle Ages weird. You try to speak, to scream, but the voice that comes out is deep, resonant, and completely foreign. What in God's name? Panic threatens to overwhelm you, but years of watching terrible sci-fi movies kick in. Stay calm. Assess the situation. You're clearly in the body of someone else, someone important, judging by the size and opulence of the room. And that voice, it sounds like a man accustomed to being obeyed. You try to remember what you had for dinner last night, if maybe this is some elaborate, cheese-fueled nightmare. Nothing. Just a blank. You take a tentative step towards the window. The view is breathtaking, in a rustic sort of way. Rolling hills covered in forests, a small village nestled in the valley below, and a river snaking its way through the landscape. A very unfamiliar view. There's a bustle of activity down in the courtyard below, stable hands tending to horses, servants carrying buckets, and a couple of men in what looks like chainmail practicing sword fighting. Yep, definitely not Kansas anymore. Historians still argue whether the average person in the Middle Ages was constantly aware of their mortality, but you're pretty sure you're about to find out firsthand. One mainstream historical fact that's suddenly very relevant: life expectancy was significantly lower back then, even for the wealthy. Disease, warfare, and the general lack of modern medicine made every day a potential death sentence. You try to remember something, anything, about this person whose body you now inhabit. His name? His family? His job? The information is frustratingly elusive, like trying to catch smoke. You grasp at fragments, a feeling of responsibility, a sense of duty, and a nagging anxiety about finances. Taxes? Something to do with money, anyway. And then, a sharp pain in your head. A memory flashes, a name, spoken with respect and a hint of fear. Baron Otto. That's you, apparently. Congratulations, you're a medieval baron. Now what? Okay, Baron Otto. That's a start. You repeat the name silently, trying to coax more information from your unwilling brain. Baron Otto of where? You glance back at the window, at the village nestled in the valley. Kleinberg? Baron Otto of Kleinberg? It sounds right. Another flash of memory, this time accompanied by a wave of annoyance. A man, short and balding, with a perpetually nervous expression. He's bowing deeply, addressing you as Mein Herr. The Reeve? The local administrator? This is going to take some getting used to. You decide to play it cool, at least for now. Imitate what you think Baron Otto would do. Striding towards the door, you pull it open with more force than intended, nearly sending a startled servant girl sprawling. Agnes! Prepare me! And fetch Wilhelm. You manage to bark out the commands in Otto's gruff voice, impressed by your own, or rather, Otto's, commanding presence. Agnes, wide-eyed and flustered, curtsies and scurries away. You lean against the doorframe, trying to gather your thoughts. You need information, and you need it fast. This Wilhelm character seems like a good place to start. Hopefully, he's not the type to ask too many questions. You already have a feeling you won't survive him asking about Otto's favorite childhood memory. While you wait, you take another look around the room, hoping to find some clue, some artifact that might shed light on Otto's life. You rifle through a chest, finding clothes, way too much fur, some dusty scrolls, written in Latin, naturally, and a rather alarming collection of weaponry. Seriously, this guy slept with a dagger under his pillow? You also find a small, leather-bound book tucked away at the bottom of the chest. It's a ledger, filled with meticulously recorded entries in a spidery script. You can't understand most of it, but you recognize some numbers and symbols that seem to relate to taxes, land ownership, and wine. Apparently, Baron Otto was quite the connoisseur. Or maybe just a raging alcoholic. You'll find out soon enough. One quirky or fringe tidbit about the Middle Ages, sumptuary laws dictated what people could wear based on their social status. As Baron Otto, you're probably allowed to wear all the ridiculously expensive fur you want. Lower classes? Not so much. Wilhelm arrives, bowing obsequiously as he enters the room. He's older than you expected, with a network of wrinkles etched around his eyes and a nervous habit of wringing his hands. Mein Herr, you summoned me. Yes, Wilhelm, you say, adopting Otto's stern gaze. I have certain matters I wish to discuss. Matters of governance. You pause, hoping Wilhelm will fill in the blanks. He doesn't disappoint. Of course, Mein Herr. The harvest has been bountiful this year, though the taxes from the southern district are slightly delayed. And there have been some whispers regarding the miller's wife. Whispers, you ask, raising an eyebrow. Whispers of witchcraft, Mein Herr. Some villagers claim she has been seen consorting with unnatural forces. Wilhelm lowers his voice, as if afraid someone might be listening. Witchcraft. Of course. Because a medieval baron's life wouldn't be complete without a good old-fashioned witch hunt. You sigh inwardly. This is going to be a long day. You wave a dismissive hand. We will address the miller's wife later. First, tell me about these delayed taxes. How delayed are we talking? Wilhelm launches into a lengthy explanation involving poor harvests, unexpected expenses, and a suspiciously detailed account of the southern district's financial woes. You try to follow along, but the numbers swim before your eyes. It's clear Wilhelm is trying to pull a fast one, padding the figures and skimming off the top. You may be a time-traveling tourist in Otto's body, but even you can smell dishonesty a mile away. You cut him off mid-sentence. Enough, Wilhelm. I want a full accounting of all revenues and expenditures for the past 3 years. In writing. By tomorrow morning. Wilhelm pales. But, mein Herr, that will take considerable time. Then you better get started, you say, your voice hardening. And Wilhelm. I suggest you ensure the accounting is accurate. I have ways of verifying these figures. You don't, of course, but Wilhelm doesn't need to know that. He nods, stammering his agreement, and backs out of the room, looking thoroughly flustered. You watch him go, feeling a small surge of satisfaction. Maybe this Baron thing isn't so bad after all. At least you can use your modern knowledge to sniff out corruption. Now, what to do about this witch? You remember that crocodile dung sunscreen from that Egyptian adventure last week? Compared to this, dealing with Wilhelm seems almost relaxing. As you ponder your next move, Agnes returns with Otto's clothes. Layers upon layers of heavy wool and leather, designed to keep you warm and protect you from, well, pretty much everything except boredom. Getting dressed is an ordeal in itself, requiring the assistance of both Agnes and Wilhelm, who you summoned back to help, a small act of revenge for the tax situation. Finally, you're fully attired, feeling like a walking, talking sausage. You even have a sword strapped to your hip. A real sword. You try to draw it, nearly tripping over your own feet in the process. Maybe you should leave the sword to the professionals. With your newfound authority and slightly restricted mobility, you decide to take a walk around the village of Kleinberg. You need to get a feel for the place to see what Otto's life is really like. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find some clue about how to get back to your own body. One mainstream historical fact: medieval towns were often incredibly crowded and unsanitary. You can smell it already. As you step out of the manor gates, you're immediately greeted by a chorus of greetings and bows. The villagers seem genuinely pleased to see you, though their expressions are tinged with a mixture of respect and fear. You try to smile, to project an image of benevolence, but it probably comes across as more of a grimace. You stroll through the village, observing the daily lives of its inhabitants. Blacksmiths hammering metal, weavers hunched over looms, children playing in the dirt streets. It's a scene straight out of a history book, complete with the pungent aroma of livestock and unwashed bodies. One light joke, you almost step in something unpleasant, prompting you to silently thank the universe for inventing shoes. You pause to watch a group of children playing a game with sticks and stones. Their laughter is infectious, and for a moment, you forget your strange predicament. You remember playing similar games as a child, before the internet and video games consumed everyone's attention. It's a stark reminder of how different life was back then, how much simpler, and yet how much harder. One open scholarly debate: historians still argue whether the average person in the Middle Ages was happier than the average person today. On the one hand, they didn't have to worry about social media or crippling student loan debt. On the other hand, they probably died of dysentery before they turned 30. As you continue your walk, you notice a distinct lack of, well, amenities. No running water, no sewage system, no Starbucks. You suddenly have a newfound appreciation for modern plumbing. You pass by the church, an imposing stone structure that dominates the village skyline. A priest, clad in a long robe, is tending to the small garden outside. He bows respectfully as you approach. "Baron Otto," he says, his voice gentle. "May God be with you." "And with you, Father," you reply, remembering some religious phrases from somewhere. "I was just admiring the edifice." The priest smiles. "It is a house of God, Baron Otto. A place of solace and reflection." "Indeed," you say, feeling slightly awkward. You're not exactly the most religious person, but you figure it's probably best to play along. You continue your walk, eventually reaching the edge of the village. From here, you can see the surrounding fields stretching out towards the horizon. Farmers are hard at work, tilling the soil and tending to their crops. It's a back-breaking job, and you can't help but feel a sense of admiration for their dedication. You also notice something else, a group of men gathered in the distance, talking in hushed tones. They seem to be looking in your direction. You can't quite make out what they're saying, but their body language suggests they're not exactly fans of yours. Paranoia begins to creep in. Are they plotting something? Are they part of some secret rebellion? Or are they just gossiping about the strange new baron who suddenly appeared out of nowhere? You decide not to dwell on it. You have more pressing matters to attend to, like the looming tax audit and the potentially murderous miller's wife. You turn back towards the village, a feeling of unease settling in your stomach. This is going to be a very interesting life. At least until you figure out how to get back to your own. One light joke, you consider starting a medieval Kickstarter campaign to fund the construction of a public toilet, but then you remember you're the Baron. You could just order people to build it. The perks of absolute power. You spend the rest of the afternoon trying to familiarize yourself with Otto's duties. Turns out, being a medieval baron is a lot more complicated than you thought. It's not just about wearing fancy clothes and ordering people around, though there is definitely some of that. You're also responsible for maintaining law and order, collecting taxes, settling disputes, and defending your territory from invaders. You pore over Otto's ledgers, trying to decipher his convoluted accounting system. It's like trying to read ancient hieroglyphics. You discover that Otto owns a significant amount of land, including several farms, a mill, and a rather lucrative vineyard. He also collects taxes from the villagers, which he uses to pay for the upkeep of the manor, the salaries of his guards, and various other expenses. Basically, you're running a medieval municipality. You also find a stack of letters, written in elegant script. They seem to be correspondence between Otto and other nobles, discussing various political matters. Most of it is boring diplomatic fluff, but you do find one letter that catches your eye. It's from a neighboring baron, complaining about a recent raid on his village. Apparently, Otto's men are suspected of being involved. You frown. Was Otto a bandit? A ruthless warlord? It wouldn't surprise you, given the general state of lawlessness in the Middle Ages. You make a mental note to investigate this matter further. You also realize that you probably won't survive Otto's enemies finding out that Otto has no idea who they are. You spend the late afternoon hearing petitions from the villagers. One man complains that his neighbor's chickens are eating his crops. Another woman accuses her husband of domestic abuse. A third man claims that he was unfairly cheated out of a land deal. You listen patiently, trying to dispense justice as fairly as possible. It's exhausting work, and you quickly realize why Otto always looks so grumpy. One quirky or fringe tidbit, trial by ordeal was a common practice in the Middle Ages. If someone was accused of a crime, they might be forced to hold a hot iron or plunge their hand into boiling water. If they healed quickly, they were deemed innocent. If they didn't, well, let's just say things didn't end well. As you listen to the villagers' complaints, you can't help but feel a sense of empathy for them. Their lives are hard, their options are limited, and they're constantly at the mercy of forces beyond their control. You may be stuck in Otto's body, but you can at least try to make their lives a little bit better. You make a mental note to look into ways to improve their living conditions. Maybe you can build a new well, or provide them with better tools, or even just lower their taxes a little bit. It's not much, but it's a start. You also realize that being a baron comes with a lot of responsibility. You're not just in charge of your own life, you're responsible for the well-being of an entire community. It's a daunting task, but you're determined to do your best. Even if you are just a modern-day tourist in a medieval body. As the sun begins to set, you retire to your chambers, feeling utterly exhausted. Agnes helps you remove your heavy clothes and prepare for bed. You collapse onto the mattress, feeling every muscle in your body ache. One mainstream historical fact: medieval beds were often filled with straw or feathers, and they weren't exactly known for their comfort. You can attest to that. Before you drift off to sleep, you remember the rumors of witchcraft. The miller's wife. Wilhelm's hushed whispers. You can't just ignore it. Superstition was rampant in the Middle Ages, and accusations of witchcraft could have devastating consequences. You need to investigate, to find out what's really going on. You toss and turn in bed, unable to sleep. You imagine the miller's wife, cowering in fear, awaiting her fate. You can't let innocent people be persecuted because of baseless accusations. You decide to take action. You rise from bed, pulling on your clothes. Agnes is asleep in a nearby chair, snoring softly. You quietly slip out of the room, grabbing a torch from the hallway. You make your way through the darkened manor, past sleeping guards and silent servants. You feel like you're in a spy movie, except you're wearing medieval clothing and armed with a torch. You head towards the stables, where you saddle a horse. You're not exactly an expert rider, but you manage to mount without falling off. You steer the horse out of the manor gates and into the darkness. You ride towards the miller's house, which is located on the outskirts of the village. The night is dark and still, and the only sound is the rhythmic clip-clop of the horse's hooves. You feel a sense of dread building inside you. As you approach the miller's house, you see a group of people gathered outside. They're carrying torches and pitchforks, and they look angry. You realize what's happening. They're about to attack the miller's wife. You urge your horse forward, riding towards the mob. Stop, you shout, your voice echoing in the night. What is the meaning of this? The crowd turns to face you, their faces illuminated by the flickering torchlight. They look surprised to see you. Baron Otto, one of them says, his voice filled with resentment. We have come to deal with the witch. Which, you ask, raising an eyebrow. What witch? The miller's wife, the man replies. She has been casting spells on our crops and making our children sick. These are just rumors, you say. There is no proof that she has done anything wrong. We have seen her with our own eyes, the man insists. She has been consorting with demons and performing dark rituals. You sigh. This is going to be more difficult than you thought. One light joke, you consider telling them that the earth is round and that germs cause disease, but you decide that might be pushing it. You dismount from your horse and approach the crowd, holding your torch high. I am Baron Otto, you say, your voice resonating with authority. And I will not allow innocent people to be persecuted based on unfounded accusations. I will investigate these claims myself. Until then, everyone go home. The crowd hesitates, unsure of what to do. They clearly want to take matters into their own hands, but they're also afraid of defying their baron. Finally, one by one, they begin to disperse, grumbling under their breath. You watch them go, feeling a sense of relief. You've managed to prevent a potential tragedy, at least for now. You turn towards the miller's house and knock on the door. A moment later, it opens, revealing a woman with wide, frightened eyes. She's young, probably in her early 20s, with long, dark hair and a pale complexion. This must be the miller's wife. Baron Otto, she says, her voice trembling. What do you want? I want to talk to you, you say. I've heard some rumors about you. She looks down at the ground, avoiding your gaze. I don't know what you're talking about. People are saying that you're a witch, you say. That you've been casting spells and consorting with demons. She gasps. That's not true. I would never do such a thing. Then tell me what's going on, you say. Why are people accusing you of witchcraft? She hesitates for a moment, then she starts to cry. I don't know, she sobs. I've always been different. I'm good at healing people with herbs, and I have a connection to nature. I think people are afraid of me because they don't understand me. You listen to her story, feeling a sense of sympathy. It's clear that she's not a witch, just a misunderstood woman with some unusual talents. But in a time of fear and superstition, that's often enough to get you killed. One mainstream historical fact, the Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of Witches, was a popular handbook for witch hunters in the Middle Ages. It detailed various methods for identifying and torturing suspected witches. Charming bedtime reading. You decide to help her. I believe you, you say. I don't think you're a witch. But I need to protect you. The people of Kleinberg are afraid, and they won't hesitate to harm you if they think you're a threat. What can I do? She asks, her voice filled with despair. For now, stay inside, you say. Don't go out alone, and don't do anything that might make people suspicious. I'll talk to the villagers, try to calm their fears. But you need to be careful. She nods, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Baron Otto. You're very kind. You leave the miller's house, feeling a sense of satisfaction. You've saved an innocent woman from a potentially terrible fate. But you also know that your work is far from over. You need to address the underlying fears and superstitions that are fueling this witch hunt. One open scholarly debate, historians still debate the causes of the witch hunt in the Middle Ages. Some blame religious fanaticism, others blame social and economic factors, and others blame plain old paranoia. As you ride back to the manor, you reflect on the events of the evening. You've gone from being a clueless tourist in a medieval body to a defender of the innocent. It's been a wild ride, and you have no idea what tomorrow will bring. But you're determined to do your best to protect the people of Kleinberg from both external threats and internal strife. You arrive back at the manor just before dawn, exhausted but strangely invigorated. You sneak back into your chambers, collapsing onto the bed. Agnes is still asleep, snoring softly. You close your eyes, and within moments, you're fast asleep. The next morning, you wake up feeling refreshed, but also burdened by the weight of your responsibilities. You have a village to govern, a tax audit to oversee, and a potential witch hunt to prevent. It's going to be a busy day. You start by summoning Wilhelm to your chambers. You need to get to the bottom of this tax situation, and you need to do it quickly. Wilhelm arrives, looking even more nervous than usual. He presents you with a stack of ledgers, filled with numbers and symbols that make your head spin. You spend the morning poring over the ledgers, trying to decipher Wilhelm's accounting system. It's a tedious process, but you eventually start to see patterns. You discover that Wilhelm has been systematically skimming off the top, diverting funds for his own personal gain. You confront him with your findings, and he immediately denies everything. He claims that the discrepancies are due to accounting errors, not deliberate fraud. But you're not buying it. You have proof, and you're not afraid to use it. You threaten to turn him over to the authorities unless he confesses and returns the stolen funds. Wilhelm finally breaks down and admits his guilt. He begs for your forgiveness, promising to make amends for his crimes. You're tempted to throw him in jail, but you decide that wouldn't be the best course of action. You need Wilhelm to help you run the village, and you can't afford to alienate him completely. Instead, you decide to give him a second chance. You order him to return the stolen funds and agree to work honestly from now on. You also demote him, replacing him with a more trustworthy administrator. Wilhelm is grateful for your mercy, and he promises to be a loyal and dedicated servant from now on. You hope he means it. One quirky or fringe tidbit: in the Middle Ages, punishment for crimes could be incredibly harsh. Minor offenses could result in public humiliation or flogging, while more serious crimes could lead to imprisonment, mutilation, or even execution. You're definitely being lenient with Wilhelm. With the tax situation resolved, for now, you turn your attention to the rumors of witchcraft. You decide to hold a village meeting to address the fears and superstitions that are fueling the witch hunt. You gather the villagers in the town square and climb onto a makeshift platform. You look out at the crowd, their faces a mixture of curiosity, apprehension, and fear. People of Kleinberg, you say, your voice resonating through the square. I have called you here today to address a matter of great concern, the rumors of witchcraft. You pause, allowing your words to sink in. I know that many of you are afraid. You continue. You believe that the miller's wife is a witch, that she has been casting spells and consorting with demons. But I am here to tell you that these are just rumors, you say. There is no proof that she has done anything wrong. She is a healer, a woman with unusual talents, but she is not a witch. The crowd murmurs in disagreement. Some of them shake their heads, unconvinced. I understand your fears, you say. You live in a world of hardship and uncertainty. You are constantly at the mercy of forces beyond your control. But fear is a dangerous thing. It can lead to prejudice, to violence, to the persecution of the innocent. We must not allow fear to control us, you say. We must rely on reason, on evidence, on compassion. We must not judge people based on rumors and superstitions. We must treat each other with respect and understanding. You pause again, looking out at the crowd. I am your Baron, you say. And I am asking you to trust me. I am asking you to put aside your fears and give the miller's wife a chance. Let us not repeat the mistakes of the past. Let us not allow ignorance and prejudice to ruin innocent lives. Your speech is met with a mixture of applause and skepticism. Some of the villagers seem to be swayed by your words, but others remain unconvinced. You know that you haven't changed everyone's minds, but you've planted a seed of doubt. You've given them something to think about. And that's a start. One light joke, you resist the urge to quote Monty Python's Witch sketch. medieval audiences probably wouldn't get the reference. After the meeting, you visit the miller's wife. She's grateful for your support, but she's also worried. She knows that some of the villagers still hate her, and she's afraid of what they might do. You reassure her that you'll do everything in your power to protect her. You promise to keep a close eye on the village and to punish anyone who tries to harm her. You also decide to teach her a few self-defense techniques, just in case. You may be a time-traveling tourist, but you're not above a little medieval martial arts training. One mainstream historical fact: women in the Middle Ages had limited legal rights and were often dependent on their husbands or male relatives for protection. You're essentially acting as the miller's wife's protector. As you leave the miller's house, you feel a sense of accomplishment. You've managed to defuse a potentially dangerous situation, and you've given hope to a woman who was on the verge of despair. But you also know that the threat of witchcraft hasn't disappeared completely. You need to remain vigilant, to protect the innocent and to prevent the spread of fear and superstition. Days turn into weeks, and life in Kleinburg settles into a routine. You continue to govern the village, dispensing justice, collecting taxes, and trying to improve the lives of your people. You also keep a close eye on the miller's wife, making sure she's safe and protected. The villagers gradually begin to accept her, realizing that she's not a threat. Some of them even seek her out for her healing skills. The rumors of witchcraft slowly fade away. You start to feel like you're actually making a difference in this medieval world. You're not just a tourist, you're a leader, a protector, a force for good. You even start to feel a strange sense of belonging. But just when you think you've got everything under control, something unexpected happens. News arrives from a neighboring village: a deadly plague has broken out. People are dying in droves, their bodies covered in black boils. The plague is spreading rapidly, and it's only a matter of time before it reaches Kleinburg. Fear sweeps through the village like wildfire. People panic, locking themselves in their homes and praying for salvation. The rumors of witchcraft resurface as people desperately search for someone to blame. You know that you need to take action, and you need to do it quickly. The plague is a far greater threat than witchcraft, and it could wipe out the entire village. You summon your advisors and begin to formulate a plan. You decide to quarantine the village, sealing off all roads and preventing anyone from entering or leaving. You also order the villagers to practice strict hygiene, washing their hands regularly and avoiding contact with the sick. You know that these measures won't be enough to stop the plague completely, but they might slow its spread. You also know that you need to prepare for the worst. You order the construction of a mass grave outside the village, and you begin to stockpile food and supplies. You also start to train a group of volunteers to care for the sick and bury the dead. The atmosphere in Kleinburg is grim. People are terrified, and they're looking to you for guidance and leadership. You try to remain calm and strong, but inside, you're just as scared as everyone else. One mainstream historical fact: the Black Death, a devastating pandemic that swept through Europe in the 14th century, killed an estimated 30 to 60% of the population. The bubonic plague, caused by bacteria transmitted by fleas on rodents, was the main culprit. You realize that you're facing a situation that's far beyond your control. You're just a modern-day tourist in a medieval body, and you have no idea how to stop a plague. But you can't give up. You have a responsibility to protect the people of Kleinburg, and you're not going to let them down. You're going to fight this plague with every ounce of strength you have. One open scholarly debate: historians still debate the long-term effects of the Black Death on European society. Some argue that it led to social and economic upheaval, while others argue that it had a more limited impact. You ride out to meet with representatives from neighboring villages, trying to coordinate a regional response to the plague. But most of them are too scared to help. They're focused on protecting their own communities, and they don't want to risk exposing themselves to the disease. You realize that you're on your own. Kleinburg is isolated, surrounded by fear and death. You need to find a way to survive. You remember something from your history classes. Some people in the Middle Ages believed that bloodletting could cure diseases. It was a misguided practice, but it was based on the idea that illness was caused by an imbalance of humors in the body. You're not a doctor, but you're desperate. You decide to try bloodletting on a few of the plague victims, just to see if it has any effect. You gather a group of volunteers and begin to perform the procedure. You make small incisions in the patient's arms and let them bleed. It's a gruesome process, and it makes you feel sick to your stomach. But to your surprise, some of the patients seem to improve after the bloodletting. Their fevers subside, and their symptoms lessen. It's not a cure, but it seems to be helping. Word spreads quickly through the village, and soon everyone wants to be bloodlet. You're overwhelmed by the demand, and you can barely keep up. You know that bloodletting is not a long-term solution, but it's buying you time. It's giving the villagers a sense of hope, and it's preventing them from panicking completely. You also start to experiment with other remedies. You consult with the miller's wife, who has a vast knowledge of herbs and natural medicines. Together, you create a concoction of herbs and spices that seems to alleviate some of the plague symptoms. You distribute the concoction to the villagers, and you encourage them to drink it regularly. Again, it's not a cure, but it seems to be helping. One quirky or fringe tidbit: people in the Middle Ages often wore amulets and charms to protect themselves from disease. Some of these amulets contain bizarre ingredients, such as dried toads, animal teeth, and human hair. As the plague continues to spread, you realize that you need to make a difficult decision. You can't save everyone. You need to prioritize your resources and focus on protecting those who are most likely to survive. You decide to isolate the sick in a separate area outside the village. You provide them with food and water, but you limit contact with them. It's a cruel decision, but you believe it's the only way to prevent the plague from wiping out the entire village. The villagers are divided over your decision. Some of them support you, believing that it's the only way to survive. Others accuse you of abandoning the sick and leaving them to die. You understand their anger and grief, but you stand firm. You know that you're doing what's best for the village, even if it's not popular. The plague rages on for weeks, and the death toll continues to rise. People are dying every day, and the mass grave outside the village is filling up quickly. You're exhausted, both physically and emotionally. You're constantly dealing with death, fear, and despair. You're starting to lose hope yourself. One night, you have a dream. You're back in your own time, lying in your own bed. You wake up, feeling refreshed and energized. You realize that it was all just a dream. But then you look around, and you see that you're still in Otto's body, still in the Middle Ages. The plague is still raging, and the people of Kleinburg are still suffering. You realize that you can't escape. You're stuck in this medieval world, and you have a responsibility to the people who depend on you. You get out of bed and go to the church. You kneel before the altar and pray for guidance. You ask God to give you the strength to continue fighting this plague, to protect the people of Kleinburg. You don't know if God is listening, but you feel a sense of peace. You know that you're not alone. You have the support of the villagers, the miller's wife, and even Wilhelm, who has proven to be a loyal and dedicated servant. You return to your duties, feeling renewed and determined. You're going to fight this plague until the very end, even if it means sacrificing your own life. One mainstream historical fact: medieval churches often served as hospitals and shelters during times of plague and famine. The clergy played a vital role in caring for the sick and providing spiritual comfort. You decide to take a risk? You remember reading about a medieval practice of burying live chickens to ward off disease. It sounds crazy, but you're desperate. You figure it can't hurt to try. You gather a group of villagers and head out to the fields. You dig a large pit and place several live chickens inside. You cover the pit with dirt and pray for a miracle. The villagers look at you like you're crazy, but they trust you. They're willing to try anything to stop the plague. A few days later, something remarkable happens. The plague begins to subside. The number of new cases drops dramatically, and the sick start to recover. You're overjoyed. You don't know if it was the bloodletting, the herbal concoction, the quarantine, or the live chickens, but something worked. The plague is finally coming to an end. The villagers celebrate, praising you as a hero. They believe that you saved them from certain death. You're grateful for their praise, but you know that you didn't do it alone. You had the help of the villagers, the miller's wife, and even Wilhelm. You were all in this together. As the plague fades away, life in Kleinberg begins to return to normal. The villagers rebuild their homes, plant their crops, and start to heal from their wounds. You continue to govern the village, but you're no longer just a tourist in a medieval body. You're a part of this community. You've shared their suffering, and you've helped them to survive. You realize that you've learned something valuable during your time in the Middle Ages. You've learned the importance of community, resilience, and hope. You've learned that even in the darkest of times, there is always a reason to keep fighting. One light joke: you consider writing a memoir titled My Year as a Medieval Baron, How I Survived the Plague and All I Got Was This Lousy Sword. One morning, you wake up and feel different. You look in the mirror and see your own face staring back at you. You're back in your own body, back in your own time. You're lying in your own bed, in your own room. The sun is shining through the window, and the birds are singing outside. You sit up and take a deep breath. It was all just a dream, a bizarre and terrifying dream. But as you look around your room, you notice something strange. Lying on your nightstand is a small, leather-bound book. It's a ledger filled with meticulously recorded entries in a spidery script. You pick up the ledger and open it. You can't understand most of it, but you recognize some numbers and symbols that seem to relate to taxes, land ownership, and wine. You close the ledger, feeling a chill run down your spine. It wasn't just a dream. It was something more. Something real. You put the ledger back on the nightstand and get out of bed. You have a feeling that your life will never be the same. One open scholarly debate: historians still debate the nature of dreams and their significance in human experience. Some believe that dreams are simply random firings of neurons in the brain, while others believe that they hold deeper meanings and can provide insights into our subconscious minds. You walk to the window and look out at the world. Everything seems different, somehow. Brighter, more vibrant, more alive. You appreciate the simple things in life: the warmth of the sun, the sound of the birds, the taste of your morning coffee. You're grateful to be back in your own time, but you also miss the people of Kleinberg. You miss the miller's wife, Wilhelm, and even the grumpy old villagers who complained about their neighbors' chickens. You wonder what happened to them after you left. Did they continue to thrive? Did they ever forget about the plague? Did they ever tell stories about the strange baron who came from another time? You'll never know for sure, but you hope they're doing well. You hope they remember you fondly. You hope they learned something from your time among them. You decide to make a change in your own life. You want to be a better person, a more compassionate person, a more resilient person. You want to live your life to the fullest, to appreciate every moment, to make a positive impact on the world. You start by volunteering at a local homeless shelter. You want to help those who are less fortunate than yourself. You want to give back to your community. You also start to study history. You want to learn more about the Middle Ages, about the Black Death, about the people who lived through those difficult times. You want to understand the lessons of the past so you can build a better future. You realize that your experience in the Middle Ages has changed you forever. You're no longer the same person you were before. You're wiser, stronger, and more compassionate. You're also more grateful. You appreciate the modern conveniences that you used to take for granted: running water, electricity, antibiotics, the internet. You realize how lucky you are to live in a time of peace and prosperity. You still have nightmares about the plague, about the death and suffering you witnessed in Kleinberg. But you also have good memories: the laughter of the children, the kindness of the villagers, the resilience of the human spirit. You know that you'll never forget your time in the Middle Ages. It was a terrifying experience, but it was also a transformative one. You're grateful for the opportunity to have lived in another time, to have seen the world through different eyes. You're grateful for the lessons you learned, the people you met, and the memories you made. You're grateful to be alive. Wind Down begins, 300 words, and now, as the echoes of Kleinberg fade and the spectre of the plague recedes, let's gently bring ourselves back to the present. Imagine the room around you, softly lit, perhaps by the gentle glow of a bedside lamp. Feel the weight of your blankets, a comforting embrace against the cool night air. The sounds of the modern world are a quiet symphony: the hum of your refrigerator, the distant rumble of a car, the soft rustle of leaves outside your window. These are the sounds of safety, of comfort, of a world far removed from the harsh realities of medieval life. Think back to Baron Otto, to the villagers of Kleinberg, to the struggles and triumphs they faced. They were real people, living through a time of unimaginable hardship, and their stories are a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. You may never know if the version you experienced was just a dream, a reflection, or something more. But for now, let those thoughts drift away like fallen leaves on a gentle stream. Breathe deeply, and feel the tension leave your body. Let your mind empty, and allow sleep to claim you. Imagine yourself floating on a calm sea, the stars twinkling above you. The gentle rocking motion lulls you into a state of peace and tranquility. There is nothing to fear, nothing to worry about. You are safe, you are loved, and you are at peace. Close your eyes and let the darkness envelop you. Sweet dreams.